For 3 years, I worked late almost every night. I was an operations coordinator for a logistics company with a culture where staying late was expected, but never mentioned on a payslip. My contract specified a 37-hour week. In practice, my average was closer to 50. I told myself this was just the industry standard. I assumed that if I put in the extra time now, it would be noticed and eventually be rewarded. It wasn't. The turning point came when a colleague who Ken would perform for 12 years was made redundant. His severance package was surprisingly small. We met for coffee, and he told me he'd spoken to an employment solicitor. The lawyer suggested he'd been misclassified and underpaid for years. Hearing his story made me look at my own situation differently. I stopped thinking about industry standards and started thinking about the law. I realized I had been operating on the assumption that my hard work was being tracked and valued. In reality, I was working in a space where my time could be taken without any official record. That night, I went home and opened a spreadsheet. I stopped looking at my job as a career and started looking at it as a forensic audit. I calculated 13 unpaid hours per week across 3 years at my contractual hourly rate. The deficit came to over £18,000. Staring at that number, I realized I'd effectively given away a year's salary. I called an employment solicitor the next morning. The solicitor identified a second issue. The company had failed to provide proper written terms for overtime. This wasn't just a clerical error, it was a breach of contract. Under legal scrutiny, the dedication the company expected from me transformed into an £18,000 debt they owed me for my labor. Per the required process, I raised a formal internal grievance first. The company sent back a dismissive letter. They claimed 50-hour weeks were within normal operational expectations for my role. Since they refused to acknowledge the debt, I filed a formal claim with the employment tribunal. Their solicitors argued that my position as an operations coordinator was senior enough that I wasn't entitled to standard overtime protections. My solicitor countered this using specific case law, dismantling their seniority defense point by point. The internal gaslighting that worked in the office didn't hold up in a tribunal. Without a legal basis for their claims, the company's position fell apart. The tribunal reached a decision, a finding in my favor on every single count. They awarded me over £22,000. This included the back pay for the overtime, interest, and penalties for the lack of written terms in my contract. The ruling also forced the company to update the employment contracts for every member of the staff to comply with the law, which caused a massive internal overhaul. I resigned the following week. Because of the legal ruling, the reference they provided was scrupulously professional. I had accepted the status quo for 3 years because I assumed I was powerless. I didn't realize the law had been on my side the entire time. If you are in a similar position, start documenting everything now. Keep your own timesheets, log your hours in a notes app, and save your emails. My case was won because I had 3 years of unofficial logs to prove my time was stolen. Employment rights exist to protect your time, but those rights are only as strong as your evidence. If you want justice, you have to keep the receipts.